Welcome to Arts Express. This is Prairie Miller, and on the show, the Epstein Files, Minneapolis, the Melania movie, and more. Pacifica host Garland Nixon drops by the show of UK host, politician, and prior host himself on Pacifica, George Galloway, diving together into the art of figuring out the world.
It's the one and only Garland Nixon, radio talk show host, political analyst supreme, and a great friend of the mother of all talk shows. Garland, wonderful to see you again. It's difficult to know where to start. It's been the mother of all weekends, hasn't it? The blizzard of revelations about your country, my country, Norway, Sweden, Somaliland, everywhere in the world appears to have been touched, afflicted even, by key individuals who turn out to have been really quite central to American political, media, and business life. Where are you on all of this?
Well, there's so many angles that you could discuss this from. One of them I think is important at this time because of what's happening. Maybe one of the biggest stories is what's happening in the markets right now, that this casino that's built on credit, on debt, on what they call speculation, but it's not really speculation. If I can invest $1 million and then I can take out an insurance or credit default insurance against that $1 million, so even if no matter which way things go, I win. That's not speculation. That's a guaranteed win for the ruling elite. So I think when you look at the Epstein files and you see them discussing pilfering the money from the Libyan Sovereign Wealth Fund after Libya was overthrown, when you see Epstein talking with the Rothschilds about the economic opportunities after the Maidan affair when they overthrew the government of Ukraine, you start to understand that when it comes down to all of these, frankly, demonic things that they're doing, that they are intricately connected. They're inextricably connected and linked to this global financial system that is coming unraveled.
Yes, I mean, the politicians and the media and the business class, from Bill Gates to Elon Musk to Jamie Dimon to the big banks, they're all in it together. How did that come about? Especially as these are the very same folks that are always telling us how much they love family values and how much they love the good old-time religion. The hypocrisy unmasked is only one of the issues involved, but it's pretty spectacular, isn't it?
Well, it is. And that's I say this paradoxically, that's the good thing about Donald Trump that we've been seeing. And that is that, he's the mask off of this empire. This is, in fact, the post-1945, economic system and system of power that Mark Carney admitted to when he said, okay, we use different standards for right and wrong against our adversaries than we do against our friends. As we know from Rex Tillerson had a few years back under the first Trump administration, he had a cable that was sent to him that was similar. But Mark Carney came out and said, yeah, the whole system's rigged and we've been lying all along, but we benefited from it. Well, that's what we're seeing with the Epstein file, that beneath that system, the foundation of that system was a criminal group that had no morals whatsoever. It makes me think back to Ursula von der Leyen and these people saying, we lead with our values, we lead with our morals. Well, I noticed that Xi Jinping's name wasn't in there. Maduro's name wasn't there. I didn't see President Putin on the plane. So we see, the outcome is the intention. Your values are expressed by your actions. And we look at the people that they hated, that they wanted to overthrow, and their values are expressed by their actions. And look at von der Leyen and these multiple scandals in the EU and throughout the US. So it's the reality of this so-called liberal system being exposed to one and all.
So what happens next, Garland? Actually, I don't often quote approvingly Chuck Schumer but he did take the trouble of counting the 3 million pages and discovered it was 2,700,000. So there's 300,000 missing pages in the 3 million batch that they said they had dropped. But there's another 3 million because they originally said they had away with releasing. God knows what's in the rest of the files. I mean, I could make a joke of it, but it's too serious to do that. God knows what's in the rest of the Epstein files. But is anyone going to be held accountable? What's the process?
Well, absolutely not, because what we're seeing now is the people that would hold them accountable are the people that actually created, were involved in these acts. So you can't ask the person who committed the crime to be the judge, jury. Often they'll say someone's the judge, jury, and advocate. Well, you're the judge, jury, advocate, defendant, plaintiff, all of the above. So I don't think they're going to come down on themselves for these criminal activities. But here's the other thing. You just brought up an important point, and that is, okay, we have a lot of missing pages here, which we know that terrible things are in. However, we have to look at that and say, well, then apparently there was a strategic nature to the release of this, that the things that were released for a reason. For instance, and people have speculated this, well, what if they're releasing a lot of bad stuff on Trump right now because they want him to attack Iran, and they're saying, well, if you don't attack Iran, the really bad stuff comes out next. So I think that they haven't given up on the Epstein strategy in that they're still using it, saying there's a lot worse. There's other people. We could release it on you, and you. So to an extent, you could argue that the fact that they've released this much and the fact that we know there's more really bad stuff means that the more stuff is really more powerful, because now there are people shivering in their boots, people who thought they'll never release any of it. And now they're thinking, oh my God, if they let people know what I did, in my country, I'll get my head cut off. So that's the other thing, this strategic nature. One other thing that is important, and we have to be wary, there's some AI pics coming out. For instance, there's some pictures of like Mamdani's mother or something with Epstein. And what we're finding out now is there were no pictures like that in the actual files, that these are AI pics that were created afterwards. There was like a mention of her in an email. So that's the other part. People are going to take these things, make AI, for God's sake, they'll probably put like my picture and yours with Epstein dancing on the beach next week for all we know. But that's the other thing. You have to verify the things that you find in there, and let's not just take it a priori that everything you see on X, or upscrolled as it were, that everything that you see on there is factual.
Well, speaking of X, Elon Musk, there's no other way of putting this. Elon Musk lied about the extent and the depth of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He alleged at the beginning, perhaps presumably not knowing that these emails, particularly these emails, existed, that it was Epstein that was constantly courting him, inviting him to the island and to parties and so on. Well, the emails seem to implicate Musk as being the guy who was chasing the invites, chasing the dragon, as it were. It's humiliating for him, but it's humiliating for the owner of Google that he gave $90 million to Melania, to Epstein's mate, to make a movie, Melania, which one person attended the premiere of in London today. One, an audience of one watched the premiere of Melania today, but that money came from Google. Bill Gates is revealed in the emails to be even more disreputable, sordid, degenerate than we already thought he was. How do these moguls recover their reputation?
Well, a couple of things, and I'll say this with Melania. It's the equivalent of Hunter Biden selling, something that looked like my daughter's fingerprinting, finger painting in elementary school for $900,000. It is simply, okay, Melania, okay, here you go. Here's $9 million for that. It's the president's cashing in on their status. It's selling access, things of that nature. And I think what we're seeing, and it's what we could expect with the ruling elite, with the political elite is creeping admissions. In law enforcement and in interviews and interrogations, there's a term, creeping admission. All that means is this: I will only admit to what you can prove. So if you say, well, Garland, were you at the scene of the murder? No. Well, we have evidence of you there. Okay, I was there. Did you know the victim? No. Well, we've got text messages between you and the victim. Okay, I knew him. So a creeping admission is, I'm only going to admit to what you can prove anyway. And so with Musk and the rest of these people, they're denying everything. And whatever comes out, once it's proven, they'll come out and they will say, okay, you got me on this, which just shows the duplicitous nature of these people. So they're being thoroughly discredited. And the people who still believe this garbage about Ukraine or Venezuela or whoever it is, Iran, need to start asking themselves, how can I continue to be misled by people who have been exposed as moral degenerates and monsters?
Well, as George W. Bush nearly said, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But these people have been fooled twice, thrice, 4, 5, 6, 10, 20 times. How often can you be fooled by a group of liars who are positively satanic in their public and or in their private behavior? That's the big question, isn't it? How do they keep these sheep down on the farm?
Well, that's the problem they have. Number one, it gets to a point where you have to be willingly fooled. It gets to a point where in order to continue to believe this, you just have to say, I don't care. I'm just going to go with the story. And the other part of it is, I think that's one of the reasons we're starting to see like these federal officers start to show up in the streets. We're starting to see National Guard in one city, ICE in another city, beating and shooting and doing all kinds of terrible things to people that push back against the system. I think they understand that the game's coming apart. This thing's unraveling. I think they understand that dissent will increase, particularly, as I said, people should understand that right now this market thing is really bad and it's not going to get better. It's going to continue to unravel, and dissent and protest will rise. And I think one of the reasons we're seeing the actions that are being taken in Minneapolis will continue to grow, because they understand that as people become unhappy, as people start to push back, the government will send in their goons to put down the dissent. And of course, leading into the next election, where clearly the current political class would take a thrashing, they need an excuse to stop that, to put it on hold, to get more control under things of that nature. And I think that's what we're looking at.
And coming up next on Arts Express.
When the winds of war blew through the sands of time, only one man could turn the tide.
Lieutenant Winston Churchill, the U.S. Marines. You got a problem with that, pal?
Now, in a time between war and peace.
What about peace in our time?
Yeah, I'll give you peace. A piece of Hitler's ass.
In a land where the Brits come from.
Hello, gentlemen, and welcome to Buckingham Palace.
History will be rewritten forever.
We'll be in Paris by June.
Well, that's a lovely time of year, not too hot.
We generally win in the end, you know. This ain't the end, pal. And it ain't the beginning of the end. Sure as hell, the end of the beginning. I'm gonna fight these guys on my own for a little while.
I'd like you to know I have a complete set of testicles.
Miranda RIchardson.
How much testicles do you got?
Mackenzie Crook.
God bless you, Churchill.
You sound very German. Keep hold of that, I'll get you a free drink.
Oh, God, I'm going to enjoy this.
Churchill, the Hollywood Years. Based on an actual war.
And those were scenes from the satire Churchill, the Hollywood Years, in which Miranda RIchardson stars as Eva Braun, opposite, well, Hitler, though in no way the British actress's only challenging role, opposite difficult and complicated men, counting as well on screen T.S. Eliot, Churchill, and in her upcoming drama The Bitter End, as the wife of Oswald Mosley, the head of the British Union of Fascists leading up to World War II back then. And Richardson is our guest on the show, talking about that and more, as we catch up with her at the Santa Barbara Film Festival for the premiere of The Yellow Tie, opposite John Malkovich as the wife of yet another complicated man, the late Romanian conductor Sergiu Cicibădache. More about that, but first, some scenes from The Yellow Tie.
I bought it for you on the day you were born. A tie for a future Prime Minister of Romania.
Won't be me, Father. I love music.
You like music?
That's not what I like, Father. It's who I am.
While you live under this roof, you will do as I say. You'll end up in some sleazy piano bar. You'll be on your own.
He says that the future belongs to conductors because people need to put a face to the music.
It will not get easier for people like you.
Rumänisches Arschloch. Los, verschwinde.
Foreigners, minorities. It will get much, much worse.
How can you produce so much energy yet so much emotion?
I just let it evolve.
You were nobody when you showed up here. We turned you into a star.
I'm trying to make music.
And I'm trying to run a business.
Well, then you better look for another puppet.
Your bitterness, your anger, sadness, these are noises in your head. Free your heart.
Listening to a recording of a concert over and over again is like making love to a photograph of Marilyn Monroe.
Absolutely superb. Don't worry, I don't bite.
Economics of our business are changing.
People like you are killing classical music. You mother...
Mr. Cicibădache, how would you like to perform back home?
My heart is there. I need to conduct with my family.
We have a child!
Child who doesn't know where he comes from.
I'm nothing like my father.
Never settled for less than perfection. Never!
Hello.
Hiya.
Hello, Miranda RIchardson, and welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me.
What was it about Sergiu Cicibădache, his life, and his creative artistic passion that drew you in to be part of this film?
I think you've said it, really. It's the sweep of the life. It spans decades, eras. Many things happen during his life, and he has to work through everything to follow his passion. He leaves his family, and eventually he finds love, and I was very happy to be part of this amazing love story, actually. They were, a love match, he and Joanna, and so I get to play again with my friend John Malkovich. I hadn't seen him for a long time. We've worked together now 3 times, I think it is, and that was a treat. And Serge is a treat, and to be introduced to the work of Cicibădache, which I'm ashamed to say I didn't know, was a gift, really, So all those things.
Yeah. Now, The Yellow Tie is not just a biography. There are stunning passages articulating in words the enormous passion driving musical creation. Lines such as, quote, "So much tension, yet the bird is still asleep." What can you say about the film, not just about Sergiu, but his palpable, passionate musical inner life?
Well, it's about self-expression. I mean, he felt a complete consuming drive to be involved in music. At first, to be a composer, which he always was and carried on composing throughout his life, but due to the guidance of Thiessen, who was a mentor, he managed to fulfill a second dream, which was to conduct, which he had been doing since a little boy, just instinctively. And he saw this incredible gift that he had and encouraged him to use it. And that's the message for the film, which is use your gift. Whatever it is, use your gift. You know, it doesn't have to be big, but in his case, it's big.
Now, you portray Ioana Dimitrescu, Sergiu's wife, who was an artist, a prominent figure in the arts as well, yet we don't learn much about her beyond being a constant, supportive wife. What can you say about the woman in real life and your approach to portraying her?
Well, she was also creatively driven and a passionate woman. I mean, she set her cap, is the expression. She set her cap at Sergei when she saw him, when she experienced his conducting and felt the connection of the creative force. And she continued to paint throughout her life. And so what we see are a number of the canvases. We don't see her at work on them, but they are a given. You know, she continued to paint throughout her life. And I think, you know, she allowed him to be who he needed to be. But that just sounds subservient. She's not. She's, as we see in the movie, she's quite feisty. You know, she's quite sure of herself. And even when she gets it wrong about the piece that they played at the concerts, I mean, it doesn't deter her for a second. She just goes on and, you know, completely charms him and blows him away.
And I wanted to ask you, what can you say about your upcoming film or not, The Bitter End, and your portrayal of Lady Diana Mosley, wife of Oswald Mosley, another complicated man, the head of the British Union of Fascists back then?
Sure. I'm cornering a market in being married to difficult men, it seems, at the moment. I can't tell you much more about it because I haven't seen it yet. But in a couple of weeks, I think I get to see the first look. And so I'm as excited as you are. And I got to work with some great people. It was the second time for me and Isabella Rossellini. Last time I worked with her was on Merlin, for goodness sake, which was a very long time ago. And she's a force. She's wonderful. And also Joan Collins, who's, an icon. She's an icon of the industry and of Britain. Sister, of course, to Jackie, who maybe the U.S. knows even somewhat better than Joan. And this was a passion project for Joan, you know? I mean, it's extraordinary. People will undoubtedly go on about, you know, her age. And I just, for somebody to continue to have the passion that she has in her 90s is, you know, it's inspiring. It's just, she's unstoppable. So I'm excited to see what she's done with it. And also it was a collaboration, again, for me with Mike Newell. So fourth time I've collaborated with Mike Newell, who is adorable. I just love Mike. He's great.
Now, you've portrayed other women drawn to exceptional but complicated men before. Vanessa Bell and sister of Virginia Woolf in The Hours, wife of Clive Bell. You're Vivian Hay in Tom and Viv opposite T.S. Eliot, and Clementine Churchill in the film Churchill. So what can you say about those choices opposite difficult men and being drawn to them, whether as female characters or those women in real life?
I think in the case of Vanessa Bell in The Hours, who was married to Duncan Grant, by the way, you know, you don't get to see that relationship at all. What you see is the relationship with her sister, Virginia Woolf. So it's a different thing going on. I think the most important thing is to try and understand these women and in their time as well, and how pioneering or not they may have been what informed their choices and behaviors. So I'm looking for layers, and maybe hopefully that's what directors are looking for when I come on a project as well. So it's a kind of a inner life and drive. I would love that to be so, but only they can. That's what I'm trying to go for. I'm trying to think myself into, the lives and the minds of these women.
And we get a vivid sense of what you saw in Sergio to fall in love with him. But what do you feel he saw in you?
Well, apart from her being rather gorgeous and very sure of herself, I think he saw somebody who understood him and he her. I mean, there's a lovely scene where they're walking through the streets of Buenos Aires, and she shows him the painting that she's done, which she confidently expects to be painted over in a couple of days. But it's a very bold gesture, and that's what he's doing in his performance as well. So they're like-minded, and they both have stories of separation and yearning really for family and home. And they've both been forced to leave. Well, in Joanna's case, she took the decision to leave, and she wanted her family to come with her, and they didn't want to. And Sergei, of course, left because that was the only way he was going to get to pursue his dream, really. So I think they had a lot to talk about,
And the striking range of choices that you portrayed, Dance with a Stranger to Eva Braun in Churchill, The Hollywood Years. and
that's hilarious. That's not the one history knows.
Oh, wait. So, to Eva Braun in Churchill, The Hollywood Years, and in Harry Potter. Would you say those choices have been by design or coincidence or something else?
Oh, I can't answer that one. I'm sorry. I'm just drawn to what I like, and sometimes it's comedy. Unashamedly, I love to do that and to make people laugh if possible. So Churchill, The Hollywood Years was not a serious portrayal of Eva Braun, but it was probably tropes that people might think they know about Eva Braun.
And what was it like, the unusual experience of being directed by Sergio's son, such a close personal relationship that you were directed in the film for?
Well, first of all, Sergio's like a big Labrador puppy. I mean, he was just so excited and full of love and joy to do the project. So that's, that communicates immediately. And he talks about himself distancing himself slightly. I don't know how he did that, but actually men are good at that. She says, generalizing wildly. He compartmentalized, what he needed to be able to direct this, kind of searing story about his family and his dad and his slightly combative, challenging relationship, but always loving, And I just, I wasn't on the film for very long. I kind of was there at the beginning with John, so I didn't get the through run of the piece, but the time I was there was hugely enjoyable, and we got a lot done, Hats off to everyone on that. The crew just worked so hard.
And what would you like audiences to understand about this film and about Sergio, his life and his art?
I think one of the things we understand, regrettably, is that we sort of obey tram lines. We don't look out enough at other countries and other people and culture. And, I mean, I've never heard of this man. I'm so glad I have. And he's, a great renown in Europe. So that's one thing. And the other thing is what I said right at the top of this interview, I think, which is about the film gives a very positive message about whatever your gift is. Use it. Just get out there and follow that dream. Don't try and be anything other than yourself. And that's very, very difficult. Sometimes it's very, very difficult, very hard. But it gives a very positive message, and I think the film is actually joyful. Plus, there's some cracking footage of Celibidache at various stages of his life during the end title sequence. So whoever is watching it, I urge you not to run away before the end titles, which so often audiences do.
Oh, yeah.
They're just a feast in themselves. So I can't say more than that, really.
Okay. And since this is for radio and the listeners can't see you, when Miranda Richardson looks in the mirror, what does she see?
A creative who just wants to keep working, please.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Miranda Richardson, for joining us on the show. And I will get the word out about the yellow tie.
Please do. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
I'm Jeremy Irons, and you're listening to Arts Express.
Coming up next on the show, over to LA's Slam Dance Film Festival and a conversation with the directors of the upcoming documentary, The Bulldogs. Here are the two young filmmakers, Noah Dixon and Ori Segev, as they return to the scene of the corporate crime of the Palestine, Ohio railroad chemical spill disaster 3 years ago to investigate the railroad company's resolution or not.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Yeah, excited to be here.
All right. In the course of making this film, did it change in any way your opinion of the government or U.S. corporations and big business like the railroad company?
My name is Noah Dixon. I'm one of the co-directors for The Bulldogs. I think in some ways, I think my overall feeling from working on it, which isn't the clearest of answers, but it kind of is like the more you know, the less you know. I think this is such a kind of huge problem. And I think for everybody that was in this community, and I think it's just kind of reflective, of what it's like in the country at large, where, you essentially have, working class people that are in a town that has already been struggling before the derailment, and even before COVID, that, like so many rural communities in this area, that things are happening that are outside of their control, that are, within huge industries and politics. And I think, because of that, there was a lot of kind of fighting within the community. But I think the bigger problem was just kind of that there's so much happening that's outside of their control. I wouldn't say it changed my perspective of things. It made me kind of realize that the more you're kind of finding out about this, the less you know, because it is such a huge problem.
And what do you hope Bulldogs conveys about the struggles, both victories and defeats, of communities in similar struggles?
Yeah, this is Ori. I'm the other co-director of the Bulldog. Yeah, I feel like I think with even our approach to the movie, I think we really wanted to kind of create something where the residents were kind of able to talk about their life and the situation.
Yeah, and I mean, again, like Ori said, I just think we're our hope is to kind of give a platform to these residents that I think is different than kind of the investigative journalism that there was a lot of, and I think that is important. But I think more so our goal was to just creatively, show a portrait of their lives, and I think their resilience, because I think at the end of the day, it was resilience, but every kind of resident had their own way in kind of dealing with this disaster and kind of responding to it. And I think that every resident, it felt like an inspirational story of how they were dealing with it, but they were all different. And I think that you really had to kind of get to know these residents to kind of feel that. And that was our goal creatively.
And would you say you gained any personal insights in the course of creating this film of ways in which you and others should face social struggles together?
I need to think about that for a second.
Yeah. I mean, again, I definitely do. I think, I'll start by saying I'm so excited to just be able to start sharing this film, because I think that there's going to be a lot of great conversations around it. I think that, what was interesting with this film is that, before we even started making it, we were following a lot of the kind of news stories and forming opinions about things. And, again, I think that the creative approach here was to just kind of like take a beat, slow down, have conversations with these people that weren't even necessarily about the train derailment, just to kind of really understand them as people. And I think that the approach of, and I don't even know how, conscious we were of making that decision, but through that process, I do feel like that's kind of changed how I think about things at large outside of this film, that when I'm reading things in the news, rather than jumping to conclusions, that I kind of, want to get a better understanding of the people and what those different perspectives might be.
And what can you say about that young man with the massive head of red hair who had so many high hopes and he ends up working at a hot dog stand?
Yeah, you're talking about that's Keller. He was honestly he had such an energy to him, and it was really, really fun filming. I think he's in a college band. No, let me know if I'm right about this.
He's not. We just found out recently that he's living in Brazil, actually, as a student, which is the best kind of news that we could have gotten. We had no idea. We reached out to him, letting him know that the film was finally ready, and if he wanted to come see it, and he said, "Oh, I can't see it because I'm living in Brazil right now." So I think he's only there for a year or so, living as an exchange student.
And what are your thoughts about your choice and significance of your title, The Bulldogs, narratively, symbolically, or otherwise?
Yeah, I think it just, I mean, from like deciding on the title, I think it came pretty fast. I mean, there's all these bulldog statues around town, and, it became sort of a motif of our film. And I think like when we started the film we started filming by, working with the football team, and that was sort of our like, and that's such a big part of like these rural communities and these small communities, especially in Ohio. And so it just kind of felt like the right title, like it just felt right. And I think it kind of came with, it's like a symbol of like resilience, it felt like.
Okay, thank you so much, Noah Dixon and Ori Segev, for joining us on the show about the Bulldogs.
Thank you so
Wonderful.
much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And now on Arts Express.
This is Bro on the Global Literary Beat, Breaking Glass. Today's episode, The Art of Scamming, Melville, Twain, Thompson, Pornocopia, and our own Scammer-in-Chief. One strand of the American character, popularized by America's first novelist, James Fenimore Cooper, is that of the rugged but honest pioneer hewing to a homespun truth that in its simplicity permits no obfuscation. That's one side. The other side, also prevalent in American literature, is a duplicitous, lying, cheating, conning American who will go to any ends to deceive his fellows. This side is particularly well represented in the work of Herman Melville, Mark Twain, and the crime novels of Jim Thompson. The art of scamming is also highlighted in my new Harry Palmer Crystal Eckert novel, Pornocopia, about how the gigantic scams of porn and gambling have penetrated the American psyche. This side of the American character is rapidly on display in the conduct of our leaders, with Trump turning the American casino economy into his own personal cash cow, and New York's former mayor Eric Adams following suit as he exits a corrupt regime by fostering a crypto Ponzi scheme on the public. Melville's last novel, aptly named The Confidence Man, features a boatload of characters heading from St. Louis to New Orleans, with the boat, with its pilgrims constituting a kind of American Canterbury Tales, split between both these types, con artists and gullible though stalwart and sometimes straight-talking victims. Men of business and men of pleasure, parlor men and backwoodsmen, farm hunters and fame hunters, heiress hunters, gold hunters, buffalo hunters. A stranger boards the boat who in several guises solicits money for charitable causes, though we know the charitable cause is himself. It's possible all the con men are one con man, or that the boat is made up of several con men, but the point is the same. By the mid-19th century, when Melville is writing, this or these characters now dominate the American landscape. The scammer aboard the aptly named Fidele or Faithful continually acts his mark to have confidence in him, which he describes as the indispensable basis of all sorts of business transactions. And of course, confidence is the sine qua non of the stock market, which now propels a hollowed-out American economy. When a passenger objects that $2 a box is too much for an herbal remedy, the confidence man suggests instead his victim take a dozen boxes at $20, and this will be getting 4 boxes for nothing. He meets his match, though, in the ship's barber. When the scammer suggests the barber trust him to pay later for a shave, declines this offer, first with, "Sir, you must excuse me, I have a family," and later with the simpler and more elegant, "Ah, sir, I must live." Melville is here invoking Shakespeare's ordinary characters who spoke simple truth to loquacious power. The barber's bare eloquence also echoes Bartleby's refusal of degrading work in Melville's Bartleby the Scrivener. I prefer not to. Later in the century, Twain's The Gilded Age, which gave the era of the robber barons in the latter part of the century its name, mocked the hypocrisy of the U.S. Senate, where lobbyists used sexual intrigue to pass bills supposedly aimed at helping the Negro, but actually aimed at enriching themselves. Behind the seduction by a female lobbyist is a Southern gentleman, calling himself a colonel, who manufactured gigantic schemes, speculations of all sorts, in an atmosphere full of little and big rumors and of vast, undefined expectations. The colonel's air of indefinite expectation translates to him employing forms of blackmail and bribery to get what he wants. When the plotters are exposed, as Senator Dilworthy, who is pushing their bill, is revealed to have unsuccessfully attempted to bribe another legislator, appropriately named Noble, to secure the vote, the Senate, instead of investigating Dilworthy, investigates Noble, the truth-teller, for impugning the reputation of a United States senator. Noble responds to these charges by asserting that the people of the country hold 3/5 of the United States Senate in contempt. 3/5 of you are Dilworthys. An assertion truer in our own time than in Twain's, as in the last Gallup poll, only 10% of U.S. citizens trust or have confidence in Congress. Twain and Melville are describing individual conning and scamming, but in the century they lived, the U.S. government, as Lewis Lapham notes, began with Andrew Jackson's introduction of the corrupt and corrupting spoil system, and equally featured the country constantly reneging on its debts and canceling parts of the money borrowed to finance its first 3 wars, with in each case the U.S. courts throwing out attempts by creditors to collect. After the War for Independence, several states defaulted on British loans to the tune of $121 million, which would be $4.4 billion today. And after the Civil War, the northern states repudiated the debts incurred by the southern states during the war. So the scamming Twain and Melville are describing took place at an institutional as well as an individual level and characterized the country as a whole. In the tradition of Twain and Melville, the crime fiction writer Jim Thompson chronicled American scamming and conning, both high and low. Indeed, in Thompson's terms, what the U.S. government was doing in the prior century was welching on its bets. Thompson was excellent on the lower form of conning, and The Grifters is a detailing of the con artist's ethos, from their self-proclaimed code, "It's a grifter's job to take the fools," to the mother of the swindler Roy, who was trained by the farmer who always worked to make himself likable, and whose grift, though it involved lifting their money, always left the people with hope. Roy, the son and budding conman, finds himself in the financial capital, New York. The logical objective of a young man whose only assets were good looks and an inherent yen for the fast dollar. But Thompson does not stop there. He's aware that the low-level con is only a reflection of what goes on at the top, as described by the young Texas oil pipe layer in South of Heaven. The callousness was more subtle on the upper levels. You knifed a man by cutting off his credit or pulling a slick double cross. Down in the dirt where we were, you simply knifed him. In his second novel, Heed the Thunder, his perverted version of Steinbeck's East of Eden, the scion of the town's wealthiest family gets away with, but is obsessed by, his likely murder of a woman he impregnates but refuses to marry. The death haunts him to the point where he could not stand himself sober these days. In The Nothing Man, Thompson describes the American way of life as supply and demand. The landlords supply what they care to in the way of housing and demand what they feel like. The protagonist of The Transgressors, Lord, is scammed by the oil company man, McBride, who has absorbed the values of the company owners. McBride hews to the letter of the law to cheat Lord out of the oil on his land by buying up the land surrounding it and using it to drill into the oil on Lord's property. Lord accuses him of drawing up a contract in bad faith with intent to defraud, to which McBride answers in the flat, dull tones of the righteous. The contract was entirely legal, abiding by the principle that proclaimed in Donald Trump's Art of the Deal that in every transaction there was a loser and a winner, and it was his job to see that the employers were not the losers. Lord's answer to this slavish devotion to institutional cheating is Thompson's ultimate indictment of a class whose scamming knows no bounds. Been a lot of people like you around, right from the beginning of history, burning and torturing and killing, slapping other people into the gas ovens, and it's always done legal. In our own century, my novel Pornocopia, the sixth Harry Palmer mystery, set in the early 50s, traces the emergence of the now much more organized and institutionalized vices and scams of porn and gambling, both in L.A. and in the newly emerging den of iniquity, Las Vegas. The case begins with Harry discovering that a Beverly Hills couple had, like 19th century nobility, little income to speak of, and were like the mink they hire Harry to recover, lavish on the outside and tattered on the inside. Harry is hired by the sex reel star Perfect to get her out of the clutches of two low-level mafiosi brothers. The brother who handles distribution, which sometimes means copying other companies' reels and repackaging them, tells Harry the secret of the business. You got to make it look seedy and dirty. If people ever found out there's nothing wrong with sex, we'd never survive. The business involves luring young women who come to California to be actresses or models into a life of porn, an industry run by racist men who abuse Perfect's co-sex reel star, the African-American performer Chansey. These women find that once they are in the business, they cannot get out and can never work in the legit movie industry. Though Harry is amazed at the similarities between the underground sex reel trade and the above-ground Hollywood studios. The novel also tracks the emerging entry into the business of larger-scale financial interests whose rationalization of the industry may involve murder. In Vegas, where Harry's escorting Chansey, he realizes the secret behind the conning phrase, "What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas." The more you lost, either at the tables or with the girls who surrounded the tables, the less you talked about what really went on, giving the impression that it was all fun and games because no one wanted to admit that while they may have come there hoping to win, they left not wanting anyone else to know that what went on instead was relentless losing. He is told by Chansey's mother that the result of the scam the casinos are running, where they skim off the top and pay little taxes, is overcrowded schools, polluted water, traffic congestion, and new casinos going up every day with no organization, just chaos. On a bender in a bar, an out-of-work reporter tells him that he was fired from the local newspaper for investigating mob expansion into all the casino-related businesses in the town. And beyond that, the mob infiltrating Main Street and Wall Street. They're going legitimate, and they're becoming mainstream, taking the short step from racketeer to capitalist. The final con Harry discovers involves a U.S. government effort to steal Iran's oil and overthrow its democratically elected leader, an effort which blows back on Harry's case in the U.S. The legitimation of crime and scamming and its blending with government reaches its apogee in our own time with Donald Trump, the scammer-in-chief, and his systematized looting of the U.S. Treasury in his Big Beautiful Bill, which continues the givebacks to the rich in the first administration, but also in his using the office to accumulate personal wealth. The blatant grabbing of loot is usually done more tastefully by politicians after they leave office. Think of the Obama's Netflix deal, or Tony Blair's and the Clintons acquiring vast sums as consultants or on the speaking circuit. According to a New York Times somewhat modest estimate, Trump has so far used the office to acquire $1.4 billion, including profits from 20 overseas real estate projects involving foreign governments, money from Amazon for the Melania documentary, not a film, but a sham exercise in branding, and from major tech and media companies, as well as from cryptocurrencies he and Melania have founded for or foisted on the public. Trump is also not above scamming his own followers. The rapper Nicki Minaj from Trinidad and Tobago was presented at the White House with a gold-embroidered document that she thought was a visa, but was actually a memento of the occasion and not a visa at all. Lastly, there's New York's Eric Adams, whose former administration has been compared to the city's most corrupt period in history, Tammany Hall. Under Adams, hundreds of contracts were handed out with no competitive bidding. Upon leaving office, he began fronting for a digital crypto product named NYC Token, all part of, as New York Magazine called it, a multi-billion-dollar meme coin hustle known as a rug pull. Adams and his cronies, who quickly deserted the currency, may have netted $1 million from investors who were then left with only a magical token, a digital imprint with no value behind it. Trump and Adams are real-life scammers stepping out of the pages of Melville, Twain, Thompson, and my own novels as a hollowed-out country whose single dominant industry consists of the manufacture of military weapons, instead of producing, embraces the ultimate con of fictitious capital as scamming becomes the currency of the day. Pornocopia is available on Amazon, Apple, Kobo, Barnes & Noble, and wherever fine books are sold. And this is Bro on the Global Literary Beat, signing off.
And that's all we have time for today on Arts Express, expression in the arts. And if you'd like to express yourself too, you can write to us at theradiogoddess@gmail.com. Until next time, this is Prairie Miller leaving the station.